Over spring vacation, I went to hell, climbed 5 mountains, rode a ferry, and explored an active volcano. My journey began in Tokushima. My goal? Climb the tallest mountain in Tokushima Prefecture, Mount Tsurugi. Unfortunately, a road closure made accessing Tsurugi by car impossible. I changed my plan and climbed Mount Miun instead, a similarly hard climb. The trailhead was a simple parking lot that led up through a leafless skeletal forest. There was a herd of creepy deer roaming around. They wouldn't spook easily, choosing to stand their ground and stare at me, ominously. It gave me shivers how their heads would dart back and forth around the trees, their beady black eyes peering into my soul. At the top of Mount Miun, the trail was rocky and cumbersome. On other sections, there was deep snow, which was just warm enough it wouldn't support my weight. I would sink walking across it, and it would fill the top of my boots. Quite annoying. I scrambled across rocks to avoid the snow and climbed on this weird grass-like shrub vegetation that covered the mountain, which was super difficult to hike on an incline. Honestly, this shrub made the top of the mountain feel like an alien planet. It was thick and a lot more difficult to traverse than grass. But Mount Miun had a fantastic panoramic view of the surrounding mountain range, and was worth the climb. I met a couple at the top, a man from Germany and a woman from Italy. They had been traveling across Shikoku and had passed through western Kochi and Kuroshio a few days prior, participating in the Kurogen knife-making workshop. It was nice to chat and kind of weird finding commonalities with these people I met in the middle of nowhere. I spent the night in Oboke Gorge, which had a beautiful scenic onsen overlooking the mountains and the river. The onsen had an outdoor pool, and sitting outside in the cold, early morning air, nestled in the hot onsen with a view of the mountains, that was a treat, especially after a hard hike the day before. And it was a nice cheap hotel. I plan to use it as a base of operations in the future when I go back to climb Tsurugi. A new day dawned. My target, Mount Zozu, and the 1,368 steps to Izutama Shrine. It's a beautiful multi-temple, multi-shrine complex in Kagawa, built along a stone path up a mountain. As far as impressive Japanese temples go, this one is on the top of my list. If you're familiar with the video game Skyrim, the steps up this mountain made me feel as if I was ascending High Hrothgar. I got a piping hot bowl of the Kagawa specialty, udon, and explored smaller tourist attractions on my drive home. The following day was rainy. I rested back home in Kuroshio and prepared myself for more adventures. Before the sun had risen, I was off to Kyushu, the final main Japanese island I have yet to visit. I took a ferry across the sea, my first time attempting ferry travel in Japan. But I made an error. The slip of paperwork I showed the man in the ferry office was not the correct one. He was kind and let me board anyway, but I'm sure this won't come back to bite me in the butt later when I try to take the return ferry. On Kyushu, I went to hell. Several, actually. A hot spring city called Beppu has several gorgeous and deadly hot springs, famously called the Beppu Hells. The hells come in a wide variety: blood-red pools, sapphire puddles, white mud pots, and steaming geysers. Beppu is fascinating to walk around. It's like a Bond villain's lair. Pipes are jutting out of the buildings and the ground, massive plumes of steam billowing. Not to mention the city smells like rotten eggs. I've been to Yellowstone in the United States, so I'm familiar with hot springs and geothermal attractions, but the pipes in Beppu are really something else. I do have a complaint. The hells were incredibly busy with tourists and 100% a tourist trap. I thought they were pretty, but I missed the solitude of the Tokushima mountains. Which is good because the following day I was back in the mountains, taking the Beppu ropeway up to Mount Tsurumi and walking up to that peak. Beppu City and the mountains in this area were, of course, gorgeous, but the weather was slightly overcast. I wasn't being rained on, so I suppose it was a fair trade-off. I spent the rest of the day walking around the city of Beppu, going to towers, malls, and eating lunch at a famous and delicious cafe. Having conquered hell in the city of Beppu, I drove down to Kagoshima Prefecture, right into the heart of a volcano. The town of Mount Aso is a beautiful and terrifying place. The entire area is one volcano. The settlements of Aso are built in the caldera of this ancient supervolcano. Terrifying. I stared down into the town thinking, Simba, everything the light touches is a volcano. That day I climbed up Mount Aso, which is a volcanic mountain range in the center of the massive Aso caldera. Talk about putting a volcano in your volcano. After a hearty lunch, I visited the Aso crater. It was intense. As I got close, I was warned that if I had asthma or heart problems, I wasn't allowed to visit, because the smoke billowing out of the crater is sulfur dioxide, which is incredibly toxic to humans. The level of sulfur dioxide that day was listed as dangerous, but they were still allowing the tourists to approach. As I was walking to get a better view, people around me were coughing from the poison. You can hear it in my footage. It was nerve-wracking. Looking down into the smoking abyss, I could see bubbling blue liquid, not the red-hot magma I imagined. Terrifying nonetheless. At this spot, I bought a small piece of hardened magma for 100 yen. Next, I climbed up a mountain behind the smoking crater. The landscape here was devoid of life, a desert of ash. Beautiful in the same way the surface of Mars or maybe the moon would be. This mountain was a difficult ascent. The path up this mountain was made of small boulders, so I scrambled and pulled myself up, which took about an hour. Clambering over the final rocks, I was rewarded with another amazing view. With 2 volcano hikes completed that day, I was satisfied with my adventure. There was nothing else I could do that would top climbing a volcano. As I was climbing down, I heard a terrifying announcement. The level of sulfur dioxide had become too dangerous, and people were being ordered to evacuate directly from around the crater. I was safe as I was hiking far away, but the announcement was certainly kinda spooky. My worst fear came true on the return trip. The ferryman on the Kyushu side was a hard ass, and wanted to see the correct vehicle paperwork. Damn it. He wasn't going to let me off easy like the Shikoku guy. I knew I had the vehicle paper, but I just didn't know what it looked like. If I couldn't find it, I would be forced to drive 8 hours around Hiroshima, and then another 6 hours back to Kochi. Not the end of the world, but certainly an expensive and lengthy pain in the ass. After some frantic searching, I found my vehicle inspection paper and made the safe journey back home. I feel good about the trip, as this is probably the longest and the farthest I've traveled in Japan by myself, and it was also a good challenge for me to take the ferry for the first time. I said in the past that I wanted to travel and hike more in Japan, and so it feels good getting after it. I spent the rest of my break driving around Kochi to see the cherry blossoms and resting at home. Spring is a chaotic time in Japan, and big changes have occurred in the teaching system in Kochi. No longer are there trained Japanese English teachers stationed at elementary schools to teach English. Instead, this work is now delegated to homeroom class teachers and ALTs. The official reason for this change, from what I've heard, is that there's a lack of Japanese English teachers in Kochi, so they can no longer afford to have them teach at elementary schools. I don't think I've mentioned this before, but my personal philosophy towards teaching is about inspiring students. Just like my philosophy with the Bold Basan is about inspiring people. The way I think most people view the teacher-student relationship is that the teacher is supposed to fill up the student with knowledge, like filling up a glass of water. I think to some extent this is correct. There is a component of passing on knowledge as a teacher that is important, but there is an entire dimension to teaching that is being missed. What the Japanese system emphasizes now is students studying English to pass school exams, so that's what they use English for. They get filled up with English grammar for tests, and they never use the language again for anything else. You don't have to take my word for it. The abysmal literacy rates of English in Japan are a testament to the effectiveness of this system. My view of what a teacher should be is a lit candle, lighting the wick of another candle. If the students are motivated to pursue things in English by themselves because they enjoy it and are having fun, then that's the ultimate long-term victory. They'll not just use English for tests and work, but for other aspects of life too. We shouldn't be teaching students English just so they can pass a test. We should be teaching them so they can have a good life. I saw somewhere a really good comparison of this idea done with the Harry Potter game Quidditch. In Quidditch, the surface level game is throwing the ball through the hoops and scoring points. But chasing and catching the snitch is the metagame of Quidditch, and if you catch the snitch, you instantly win. Filling up students with knowledge is throwing balls through hoops. Inspiring students and preparing them to have a good life is catching the snitch. How can someone use English to improve their life or have a better life? Well, there are so many things English is good for. It's a tool for storytelling, poetry, music, food, art, games, travel, and it's connected to dozens of fascinating cultures. It's why the New Zealand exchange program is so effective and powerful in Kuroshio. So, to fail to allow students to have fun with English and enjoy using it to experience and do cool things other than work is a failure to allow them to have long-term success and a better, more fulfilling life. So, circling back to the elementary schools, this is a critical period of time in Japanese students' lives where, as an ALT teacher, you can take a bit more liberty and have more fun in class. And it's not wasting time. It's actually working towards that long-term goal of lighting students' candles and teaching them to enjoy English, teaching them to teach themselves. Fortunately or unfortunately, ALTs in Kochi won't work with trained Japanese English teachers to accomplish this goal, but you best believe I'm getting after it. I'm going to hit my elementary schools like a walking chandelier. The Kochi Life newsletter published its Winter and Spring 2025 edition. I had been sending in content for the newsletter since September last year, so I'm happy to see it live. In it, I wrote an article about the Shikoku A-Jet sports tournaments I attended, published photos from Koban knife making and ziplining, and I also got to talk about the Bold Basan and how it has documented my evolution as a person over the last 3 or 4 years. Some of my ALT peers reached out and they said they enjoyed the Bold Basan article in particular, and how vulnerable I was writing it, and they congratulated me on my victories. I'm flattered by their praise, and I hope those who read it are inspired by my story. My Kochi A-Jet partner and I recently selected our successors, Gavin and Zane. It was my first time being on the other end of a selection or hiring process, and it was eye-opening to look at the process from a hiring perspective. How professionally and passionately a person presented themselves made a huge difference in how my partner and I viewed their applications, as well as timeliness and ability to carry out the Kochi A-Jet traditions. In the end, we selected 2 worthy candidates who are already active in their local jet communities, and I think they will make a great fit for the role. In the middle of April, we welcomed them as leaders to the Kochi community, making them officially a part of the A-Jet team. Mission success. At my new elementary school, students are so much fun to play with. My first day, they were excitedly chatting to each other in English before they met me. It was really cute. I could hear them from the teacher's room chatting down the hall. I play with them every chance I get, and the games always change. Sometimes it's baseball, soccer, catch, dodgeball, or sometimes we even just ride on the unicycles. Man, trying a unicycle for the first time, those things are deadly on the shins. So I rode one for recess, and I will need much more practice to be proficient. I was falling down and whipping around trying to balance. My students gave me some grace and didn't make too much fun of me, but they might have also been secretly impressed that I was just willing to try. Once I was playing dodgeball with the Saga Junior High boys. Before throwing the ball, the boys would do this really funny thing where they would yell out the name of an anime move or their own made-up anime move and then throw the ball in some ridiculous manner. Sometimes they would 360 or fall down or run and slide across the floor as they tossed the ball. I did a move where I jumped up in the air and slammed the ball down, and the boys named the move for me Tanner Galaxy Impact, or Tanner Impact. It's pretty cool. I've seen the move from the anime One Piece, and I'm flattered that they consider my power level on par with Monkey D. Garp. I wouldn't place myself at Admiral level in the One Piece universe. I'm definitely less than a basic Marine, but if the students want to tier my dodgeball skills that high, I'll certainly take it. With a Mount Ishizuchi hike, strawberry picking, 2 marathon events, t-shirt art festival, and surf camp coming up on the horizon, May is going to be another action-packed adventure. But until then, that's all for now. Take care and be bold.